Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, or whatever time zone it is, wherever you in the world. It is your Lore and Saviour. And yeah, today we're going to be talking about Pokemon, which is one of my oldest loves. Now this might come as a little surprise to you given the general theme and topic for this channel, but I've mentioned it many years ago now in one of the first Q&As that I've done, that I absolutely adore Pokemon. Like if I wasn't doing World of Darkness content on YouTube, it would probably be Pokemon. Like I have played pretty much every single Pokemon game, and I own most of them. Maybe I could do like a side channel called PokeRoll, who knows? Let me know in the comments below if that's something that you'd sign up to. Yeah, there is very little in this world that I love more than Pokemon. I've enjoyed the video games, I've enjoyed the anime series, not so much the trading card games, but I have some of the original ones, and some newer ones I guess, but it wasn't something that I really bothered playing at school. Just, they look pretty and I recognise these trading cards, you know, the Pokemon, innit? So why exactly are we talking about Pokemon on a tabletop role-playing game focused channel? Well, because I recently discovered there is a whole network of unofficial fan-made Pokémon TTRPGs, which I discovered after watching this video that randomly appeared on my fucking video feed. So, thank you YouTube algorithm gods for feeding more niche hobbies of mine and just allow me to over-obsess about them for the next couple of weeks. Although that may well be longer given when this video is going to come out, because I'm recording this on the 4th of April 2025. Just to give you an idea about how far advanced I do things these days. And I find this whole Pokemon TTRPG a huge fascinating minefield, and it's a very interesting way that I just said that word, but we're just going to skim over that. Like, a point that the original YouTuber pointed out in their video, which I'll leave in the description below, is that when you're trying to transform Pokemon into a TTRPG, you have a very interesting design choice that makes Pokemon stick out a lot more than its rivals. Unlike every other RPG that has ever RPG'd, you play as one player and you can occasionally control the actions of your fellow party members. And that's fairly straightforward to put into a tabletop setting. Like, you have a group of players who together form a party, each with their own power, spells and items and whatnot, etc. So it's easy to divvy up those ideas a lot more. But with Pokemon, you don't control your own actions. I mean, you, the player, the Pokemon trainer, genuinely don't have any skills or talents. You are just a blank canvas. You are a Pokemon trainer going on to challenge the Pokemon League, and you control the actions of 6 little monsters, or some really big monsters depending on the Pokemon in question. And I'm gonna say that the nuances behind its battle system are a lot more involved than a lot of its competitors, where you have an attack, a defense, a special attack, and all the rest of it. Sure, there's a lot more nuanced systems out there, but there's a bit more to think about than you just controlling a party member or a group of others. And in a TTRPG sense, you can be one person and then everybody else forms your party. Whereas with Pokemon, there is you, the trainer, 6 others, and you then do that with a group of 3 or 4 other people. That is suddenly a lot of fucking character sheets, and that's a lot of fucking bookkeeping that the games master has to do. So trying to work out how to do all of this is an interesting challenge on of itself. Also, what elements of Pokemon are you going to try and represent? Are you going to focus more on the video games, where it is very much on the number crunching, the battles and the numbers and all of that? Or are you going for something that's a bit more of a narrative, like what the anime does? And honestly, the video games as well. Because for me, the enjoyment with Pokemon is not just the battles in of themselves, but it's the journey along the way, the friends that we make and all the rest of that cheesy garbage. Let's actually explore that a bit more, because for me, some of the highlight moments of my Pokemon experiences throughout the many years I've been playing Pokemon, which is since the beginning, is the story. Surprise, surprise. Which, granted, is very minimal with the Pokemon games, because they're sort of designed for kids, and each main entry is designed where that particular main entry is going to be that kiddie's first introduction to Pokemon, so it has to be kind of subpar for the most part, but we'll get onto that in a moment. But for me, some of the greater highlights or moments of the story and the sense of discovery, like I can remember playing Pokemon Ruby. I've played, as I said, all of them. I've been playing it since the beginning. And with Silver and Blue, which is what I played originally, I do have my copy of Blue still. Like, everything is pretty landlocked. Sure, every so often you have to go to surf to go to a particular island, and that's a late game theme, which in of itself is pretty cool, especially when you're playing Pokemon for the first time. It's like, wow, I can travel across bodies of water on my Pokemon. I remember with Ruby that you had to backtrack and go to Rustboro Island. I believe that it was called anyway. It's a bit, Devonport City, I think it was, or Devonport Town, I think. Whatever, it was Devonport something. And you have to take a little boat with this old geezer that like takes you along and say, oh, I can come back here later on when I've got surf. That's pretty neat. And then you go through the same fucking boat ride with up to Lily Cove, which is also pretty neat. And also it's like a beach. You didn't really have beach towns prior to that, which is such a weird thing to say, I guess. But and then going with Diamond and Pearl and Platinum, the step up in graphics, how cooler things and things popped out a bit more. But I have a very strong memory with Black and White. Black and White and Black and White 2 are my favourite Pokemon games. Fun enough, they're the most story driven as well. Like, again, step up in the graphics department, and you're going along that bridge to that New York inspired city. The camera pans, moves about, like, for all this dramatic sensibility. You don't have the bike yet, so you can only run across it, so they are deliberately making you feel the scale of this particular region. And then you actually like zoom in into the city, you wander around the outside, this docks of it, it spins around with you, you go through the different streets, and they're just nameless NPCs everywhere, just going up and down. You can't talk to most of them, and they kind of like clip through you or move around, but that just created like this weird sense of scale and life to it, even though you couldn't really talk to them. But then again, do you spend all your time talking to fucking strangers, passerbys on the street? No, you fucking don't. With X and Y again, like, with a more step up with the 3D graphics, and Lumio City, which you just explore, just going all the way around, up towards the tower. And even with Sword and Shield and X and Y, when they became more open world, you know, as a wee little lad who had experienced Pokemon from the beginning, with all these little sprites, just seeing the world expand and it having a more open world vibe, particularly with Scarlet and Violet, where it is an open world. Just that scale of like, whoa, it wore off pretty fucking quickly. But, and Sword and Shield's like wild zones, where it was a bit more open, got a bit lackluster pretty quickly. But it was cool that you kept coming back to and exploring newer areas of that, and you could go to really dangerous bits and get completely arse-fucked raw with a barbed wire, but it's just the sense of discovery and going to these new towns and discovering what these different organisations are doing, like the bad ones that you beat up. Like, it's the journey. Sure, the battles are really cool, like that fucking Miltank, Cynthia's Garchomp, need I say any more? That's all part of the journey. And like, you might battle with people online, which is like detached from the main story, but I'm prepared to argue that people enjoy Pokemon a lot more. Actually, no, I'm not going to say that. I enjoy Pokemon a lot more for the narrative than just the battles. But then again, I could just be a filthy casual. But when you're putting that into a TTRPG sense, it then creates an issue of like, which one do you focus on? Like the numbers and crunching all the battles and stuff, or the narrative? Because sure, with all the crunching stuff, you can adapt it, or do a lot of roleplay within that. But you're not taking full advantage of the scenario, and also all the other bits and pieces are perhaps going to weigh you down, because you now go into battle and it just detaches you away a bit more from the roleplay. Kind of like the whole Dungeons and Dragons situation, I think. And that doesn't take into consideration that as at present, there are 1,025 Pokemon. Over 1,000 little fucks that you can control, each with a variety of different movesets. I don't even know how many moves there are, and I can't be asked to search. We can go and Google that if it's interest to you. So you've got quite a lot of combinations to deal with, and on top of Pokemon Natures, which affects the attack speed and all the rest of it, the stats of your Pokemon. It's quite a lot of legwork for a Games Master if you're wanting to go with one of the crunchier systems, like the various editions of Pokemon Tabletop Adventure, and everyone's favourite, seemingly, is Pokemon Tabletop United, which, because it was one that everybody really enjoyed, I had a look at it. I found a couple of videos online of someone describing it, and whilst it's very clear that they're very passionate and they know what they're talking about, I can't find any sense of enjoyment of that for me, personally, because it just involves a lot of number crunching, and it sort of breaks the meta of Pokemon a little bit. Yes, that is important to me, apparently, where you have like different trainer types, i.e. classes that have their own unique abilities and whatnot. And there seems to be systems in place for every single type of thing that you could do in a Pokemon game. And whilst that does sound like a lot of fun to some people, I'm sure, that's not my cup of tea. And with the games that I run and the type of players that I have, the combat elements of it would have to take a bit on the back burner and putting the narrative forward. Because I do think with tabletop role-playing games, even with the most bare-bones basics Dungeons & Dragons experience, there is something that is driving you all forward into that dungeon to get that loot and slay that dragon, you know? There's always a little bit of role-playing and getting inside the character's head from choosing the moves they're going to do. So yeah, the story to me is always going to take centre place. And with Pokemon, from my perspective, I don't think the combat's all that important, really. It's a really important bit for sure, but I don't think it should take centre stage. So, going through all the different Pokemon tabletop games that fans have made, which I have to say a fair amount of it does focus on the crunches side of things, there's a whole slew of them, as I mentioned at the beginning of this little rant. The weirdest one is Pokemon Pen and Paper Edition, which I kind of like there because it sort of takes on the naming scheme of the Pokemon games, Pokemon Pen and Pokemon Paper Edition. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but that's what I read into it. Which seems really simple, until you get to the bit on doing Pokemon battles, where you have to use the online fan battle site Pokemon Showdown, where you can just have competitive battles with people, put together any sort of team that you want from any generation, and just go at it. Free Pokemon battling. And I swear, that site is just like on the fucking cusp of Nintendo taking it down. I hope my video isn't the one that causes it, but I'd be very surprised if that's the case. But it's that weird disconnect a bit odd to me, because you're using an online fan-made video game to simulate battles rather than coming up with something in-game. Yeah, it makes it a lot more simple, but what happens if Pokemon Showdown does go down? Then you're fucked. And that kind of draws another problem with a fan down to the fan stuff. It is only relying on the fans to create the material. So if there's a system of it that's missing a bit of a Pokedex, or lacks Pokemon generation or sheets, or just general support, well, there's little you can do about it, really. It's, for all intents and purposes, a dead game. So Lore, I hear you ponder, if you've reached this point in the video. What one are you interested in? Well, truth be told, the one that I'm leaning a bit more towards is PokeRoll, which is certainly the most professional looking. It's the one that has the most support going on behind it, and there is a new edition of it coming in August, which will probably complete the Pokedex and the other gimmicks present in that game. Coincidentally, it's the most World of Darkness in terms of its systems, which was completely coincidental, but it's not that I only play games with a similar system, it's just a weird coincidence that just made the bridging the gap a bit easier, where it uses a pool of D6. It's a pooled system where you roll this and that against someone else's this and that, which is fairly straightforward, and then you have your different Pokemon's moves that add modifiers to the rolls and whatnot. Pokemon above your rank won't listen to you. You can do Pokemon trainers different age brackets, beginner, kid, teen and senior, which I think is quite funny because adult Pokemon trainers don't exist but the old ones do, which is, I think, a little weird funny thing there. It gives you information about all the different regions, the facilities available. There's a whole system for Pokemon contests, there's systems for battles, and then the vast majority of the book is taken up with the moves and the Pokedex. Really, a fair amount of the book is quite easy to digest, and I think that's all that's needed. I don't think it's necessary to go balls deep into every single fucking move, but that's just my style of play, and that's just how I enjoy things. It's keeping things as simple as possible, and when you've got over 1,000 Pokemon with a lot of different move combinations, it can be a bit tricky. Now, the downside to that is that every Pokemon is unique with different natures and moves and whatnot, so keeping it simple like the way I've just suggested it does remove some of that uniqueness from it, I think. But putting in the minds of players who can interpret the Pokemon how they wish. Although I have to say, with PokeRoll, it's this games master that sort of adds the character to each of the Pokemon, so it's down to them really. But that also spars off from that particular player/trainer's relationship with that Pokemon, because the likes of Pokemon Tabletop Adventure and Pokemon Tabletop United or Limited, I can't remember what it is now, players control their Pokemon and they do the role play and all that stuff, so there's a lot to think about with that really. And there's a version of that that's based on the Savage World system, another version that's based on Powered by the Apocalypse, which simplifies things even further and puts pretty much all the control back in the player's hands, with the games master only narrating outcomes, positive, negative and neutral and everything else in between, which may be more to what you're looking for, which is absolutely fine. And I love it that there is a diversity of these things, but I do find it annoying that the ones that are closest to D&D are the ones that people are gravitating to, even to the point where you have Pokemon D&D homebrews where they're treated as stats but like for a D&D bestiary sort of thing, which is a little frustrating for me. You know, just not everything has to be D&D, it can be its own little thing. So yeah, I've waffled about that one before. The mentioning of D&D also highlights a couple of inherent flaws of this, is that unlike some D&D homebrews where you can do Kickstarters and whatnot to make a physical book out of them, because you're using the Pokemon license, these things will remain free and you really can't make any money from them. And on top of that, they're probably going to be free PDFs, which is alright for a lot of people, but if you've got someone like me who does things old school, who likes to have the physical tomes and read and absorb the information that way, well, you're kind of up shit creek with a paddle really, and just have to fork out a bit of cash to have something printed, whether professionally or, you know, just enough for you to get on by, which, you know, is a little annoying. I mean, you'd be paying money to buy a proper book, I guess, but it's... And with everything that's going on in the world right now, buying anything has become a far more perilous activity than it was already, and it was pretty shitty to begin with, which is very annoying. And the more D&D-centric ones, because there's a lot of cruncher mechanics in all of them, it requires you to download various player handbooks, and a lot of these have got a shitload of errata for it as well, which is frustrating, because I do not like it when games divvy up their rules across multiple books, because I don't care what anybody says. Having read through a few of these for various different systems, including the Pokemon ones, the games master needs to have both of them. So they've got to reference 2 books, each one particularly chunky, and I don't think it's particularly fair for the games master to do such heavy lifting. Like, a lot of that should be down to the players. Like, the games master has to know the system fairly well. Sure, they're going to forget things, but that's just natural. But I don't think it's fair that a games master should do all that fucking math and crunch work. Now, I mean, if you like doing all that sort of shit, that's fucking fantastic, good on you, but I don't think a lot of people will. And a lot of people don't like D&D and were not prepared to do all that fucking legwork just to give their players a semi-good time. It's super frustrating, really. And I think, from my brief reading of it, I'd actually have to put this into practice before I can probably define this, that PokeRoll is a nice balance between you've got a lot to deal with because you've got over a fucking 1,000 monsters to deal with, and trainers, and all the different levels and moves and everything and so forth. But it puts the narrative first, which I think is what Pokemon is all about, really. Yeah, sure, it's got Catch 'em All in the title, but it's all part of the journey, the fun and the experience, and discovering new lands and opportunity and all the rest of it. So maybe in the future I'll run some Pokemon for some people. Who knows, if it's really popular with you a lot, I might do a whole bunch of videos on it. Might make a fucking separate channel, do fucking Pokemon shit over there. I don't know, but that'll be some time down the line, I think, because I have a lot of cool ideas for this channel and I'm not planning on going anywhere just yet. And even if I was doing a separate channel, I wouldn't leave you lot as well. So let's not worry about that too much. And as we reach the end of this video, are you curious to try out some of these fan-made tabletop role-playing games? Have you played any of them already? Let me know in the comments below. Let me know your favourite Pokemon card, deck, booster pack, card, whatever. What's your favourite Pokemon game? What's your favourite Pokemon? Give me some of your best Pokemon experiences, and give me some of the worst ones as well. Let's just hear it all out for everybody to experience in the comments below with some good old fun Pokemon fun. Now, whilst you're down there, do check out the description, because I'll leave these various fan-made projects for you to go and play and try out in your games and see what you make of them. I'm also going to leave a load of World of Darkness books just to bring things back on brand for a moment, to include in your own games. What a weird mix match that would be. Now, if you purchase those World of Darkness books, I get some of the money back, which will allow me to provide more awesome content for you for free. You get books, I get books, and you get free content. Wowzers. Now, if you have those books and want to buy some of them dry through RPG before the prices go up the wazoo, copy and paste that URL affiliate code into the URL of the book you want to purchase before you put it into the basket, regardless, whether it's a PDF or print on demand, and I get some of the money back that way too, which is absolutely poggers. And of course, if you like this video, do like it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the Lore by Night channel if you love everything nerdy shit, horror, World of Darkness and more, and share this video with everyone and anyone who would love what I do, and see you on the next upload, whatever that may well be for you. And until next time, farewell. Come on, Holly, let's go catch 'em all.